Yeah, we're live.
Greetings, everyone. I'm Noel Gordon. We're coming to you from Education Solutions International. We appreciate the fact that you're indulging us. Each month, we present several relevant professional development opportunities, and we know that you're tuning in. We're very excited to say that we have individuals from over 15 different countries across the Caribbean and beyond. We want to get straight in our program because you've been kind, you've been patient with us. So without any further ado, I'm going to be asking Ms. Sharon Kelsick, who is the president of the Caribbean Union of Teachers, to greet us at this time. Ms. Kelsick, Mrs. Kelsick, would you greet us at this time? Thank you so much.
Good evening, Dr. Gordon. Thank you so much for inviting me again.
Thank you.
To your participants. I think what you're doing is so important. We had the CUT has had a very long relationship with ESI, and we know that there is value in what you do and what you bring. And so I know that the sessions on a monthly basis are very beneficial to the teachers within the Caribbean and wider field. I'm especially happy for the topic that you will be looking at today. I was privileged to sit here with professionals today, and there were only two of us who were educators. And one of the other gentlemen said, they've noticed how different children are now. The children that we teach now, how different they are. And we started talking about, teacher burnout and having to deal with all the behavioral issues that we see students. And I think part of the problem is that a lot of us are not equipped with the skills or the knowledge to deal with those issues because they are so new. We are accustomed to being told what to do and being obedient and just following through and doing what we're told. But we have a different generation of children now, and it's so important that we have an understanding of who they are, how their brain works, what the challenges are they face as children, and what we can do as educators, what are the skills that we need as educators to best meet them where they are at. And so I really appreciate sessions like this. And I know that it's going to be a good session. Again, I'm not going to be able to stay for the entire thing. I have another meeting at 7, but at least I will get the first hour in with you guys to really listen in to what is happening. So I wish you all the best. Thank you again for having me. I always look forward to these sessions and to partnering with ESI on projects like this. And I look forward to even more in the coming months.
Thank you very kindly, Mrs. Kelsick. We appreciate your indulgence. I'm asking Dr. Dice, our CEO at this time. Would you come on, Dr. Dice, and you want to greet us at this time?
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Gordon. It's a pleasure to have everybody on. And thank you, Mrs. Kelsick, Sharon Kelsick, the president of the Caribbean Union of Teachers, for being on and endorsing and also bringing greetings on behalf of the union. We have a lot going on in Education Solutions International, and so we want you to be very close to us so nothing will fall far from you. As they say, you're close to the table, you might even catch a scraps. So be very close, and whatever we have going on, we always share with you. It's a privilege, and as Dr. Gordon said earlier, wonderful to have so many people from so many different nations on here with us to go through this workshop. I also, on behalf of ESI, too, I know Dr. Gordon is going to thank her, but I want to thank her personally. Dr. Margaret Chin, the Assistant Secretary General for the Jamaica Teachers Association, for being on and also leading this workshop. It's really a pleasure to have her on, and always a partner and always a very strong supporter of equitable education in Jamaica as well as the Caribbean. So thank you so much, Dr. Chin, for being on here. And I'm going to turn it back over to you, Dr. Gordon.
Thank you, Dr. Dice. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce our presenter, Dr. Margaret Chin. Dr. Chin is an accomplished educator, leader, and advocate with over 26 years of experience in education, serving across early childhood, primary, secondary, guidance and counseling, special education, and gifted and talented. So that runs the gamut, actually. She currently serves as the Assistant Secretary General of the Jamaica Teachers Association, overseeing professional services, and is also a respected workshop presenter, conference speaker, and certified trainer. Her academic accomplishments include a doctorate in education from the University of Sheffield, a master's in special education from Nova Southeastern University, a degree in school counseling from Western Carolina University, and teacher training from the Mico College. Of course, now the Mico University College, one of Jamaica's premier teacher training institutions. Beyond education, Dr. Chin is a passionate person, and she's passionate about youth advocacy and community development, working with several organizations and representing the Kivoy Community Development Institute at the United Nations in New York in 2022. An award recipient for contributions to education and community service, Dr. Chin continues to inspire through leadership, service, and excellence. Please join me in warmly welcoming Dr. Margaret Chin. To you, Dr. Chin.
Am I being heard?
Yes.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Gordon. Nice for us to be meeting again in a professional space. Welcome to all of our educators who are online, to Mrs. Kelsick. I hope she's still there. Warm welcome, and send warm regards to all your members of CUT. It's really a pleasure to be here, to be talking about one of my favorite topics, neurodiversity. I got hooked onto this term a few years ago because it kind of made you start thinking of special education in a different way. And it's actually in a way that I like. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. First of all, are you all seeing my screen?
Yes.
You're all seeing my screen. I'm going to turn my camera off a little because I think because of the connectivity issues I'm having, I don't want it to interrupt the presentation. So you're not going to see me until the end of the presentation. All right. So we're just going to do two things for this evening. As the topic said, it spoke about the naughty child and the naughty chair. We're going to dismantle all of that. We're going to reframe all of that. And we're going to look at some strategies, how we can look through different lenses at this thing that we call misbehavior and defiance, and how children are rude and they're not learning and they're not lazy. We're going to reframe all of that and leave the session probably thinking a little bit differently about the children who we have in front of us. So I want us to start off with this activity. All of you, I see 111. I want you to look at this slide and I want you to read it in 30 seconds, including you, Dr. Gordon.
Okay.
I'm not leaving you out.
Okay.
Can you tell me what this is? And you can allow, if persons want to, can they unmute Noel, or you'll have to do that for them?
Yes, we can unmute them if they put their hand up, then we'll unmute
Yeah,
them.
I wouldn't mind somebody taking this on.
Yeah, just raise your hand and we'll unmute you.
I see a hand go up. I see Anne-Marie.
Yes, ma'am. So it says, okay, so it says, it doesn't matter how smart a student is for them to struggle. When the brain sees letters that are flipped or missing, reading becomes a workout. Every single word requires intense focus. By the end of the day, the student is totally exhausted, not because they do not care, but because they have worked twice as hard as everyone else.
And what's the title at the top?
Oh, the reading challenge.
Very good. You came across the script before?
No, ma'am. I just like reading. So I
Wow.
think I saw somewhere already that it doesn't matter once the first and the last letters are there, it doesn't matter the order, you will still know the word. That's how the brain works. That's
There
how I
you go.
just yeah.
Oh, fabulous. I think we should put some emojis for you, Anne Marie, in the chat. Everybody needs to congratulate her. She is correct.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, you kind of, by the way, I noticed when you were reading, you kind of paused and so on. What caused that?
Honestly, looking at the screen too much, I get blurred vision. I should be wearing glasses, but I do not.
Ah, so if you were wearing your glasses, you probably would have been able to read more fluently. That's what you're saying?
Possibly, yes.
But I think you did. I think you did very, 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 very well.
Thank
And for
you.
those persons, this is the English version of what your brain saw. So it does not matter how smart a student is for them to struggle. And Anne-Marie was struggling a while ago, eh? Even though she's a very good reader, very smart, when the brain sees letters that are flipped or missing, reading becomes a workout. Every single word requires intense focus. And so by the end of the day, the student is totally exhausted, not because they do not care, but because they have worked twice as hard as everyone else. And Anne-Marie may struggle too because she's also having issues with her vision. So she will struggle. And you heard it while she was reading a while ago that she was struggling a bit. But it doesn't take away the fact that she is very smart. Good? So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Those students in your class who are very smart in their own way, but they still struggle. Tell me about this picture that I have here. You can write your responses in the chat, Noel, if you want. I'm asking if you probably can read what they're saying. So this gentleman goes into a supermarket and he wants to purchase bottled water. What do you notice?
There are 3 types of water.
Ah, yes. What else do you notice?
Um,
Great. So you have spring water, you have mountain water, you have
the water
water
tower.
tower water. Yes. What else you notice?
I have a few comments.
Go ahead.
The customer is deciding which one to purchase.
Yes.
Some products, different options. There are 3 types, different types of water.
What else do we notice?
I see different sizes. Someone put
Different sizes. Are they all shaped the same way?
yeah. Deciding which one to choose, price difference, the shapes, all bottled, all different. They're coming in. Which one to choose? Too many options.
Yes, and the thing is, this is exactly how our classroom is. Even on this very platform with 100 and almost 20 of us, we're all different. And so as teachers, that's the real struggle that we face. Whether we have a classroom of 20 students, 15 students, 30 students, all of these children are different. Some of them, as we see in the bottle, different size, different shapes, different coloration, but they're all different. And so even though we talk about this difference in the context of this gentleman trying to purchase bottled water, it's the same thing, same analogy that happens in our classroom. And so there's a terminology that we use called neurodivergent. Neuro meaning having to do with the brain. Now you may hear, well, let me throw this out. Can anyone tell me what neurodivergent means?
Persons who thinks differently from the regular persons.
Okay, excellent. Anybody else want to jump in? Anybody else wants to jump in?
The chat says different ways of thinking.
Excellent. So I hear you talking about thinking, and we can probably narrow it down to processing. Now, anatomically, every single human being has the same brain. So there's no such thing as a male brain and a female brain. Anatomically, and Noel, you can back me up with this, we're all born with the same brain.
Yes.
Neurons and all those things that make up the brain. Every human being carries that. Where we depart is how we process information within our environment and how we interact with the environment. And that makes us so diverse. I hope you're getting the link. So you'll hear terms like neurotypical, which has to do with the cognitive and social processing of our brain and the expectations. So you might hear that, oh, he behaves like a typical so and so. So neurotypical has to do with the cognitive and social processing. You'll also hear terms like neurodiversity, which really is the mix or the mixture of diverse neurological profiles. And we call those learning styles. So when you talk about neurodiversity, some of us here are auditory learners, some of us here are visual learners. We have people who are tactile, kinesthetic, and so on. So you'll hear that term neurodiversity. So right on this platform, we have a collective mix of diverse neurological profiles. So if I was face to face with you, I would have probably been able to do an assessment. You'll be able to know your style, your neurological profile. And that is what you take to navigate this space that we call the world. You'll also hear neuro. Let me see if I can break this one. Neuronormativity. What do you think that one means? Neuronormativity.
Would that have anything to do with normal activity of the brains?
It really has to do with assuming that a neurotype is superior to or is the correct way to exist. So, and we grew up hearing that too. We grew up hearing that maybe a particular race is superior to another race. A particular income group might be more superior in thinking than people from lower SES. And many of us would have come across theorists and stuff who base some of those assumptions. So those are just some terminals I want us to plug into our brains a little bit. But I want you to live knowing that every human being is born with the same brain. We're all born equal. We're all born equal. We're born with the same anatomy. After we're born, those experiences and so on makes us more diverse. And so we're going to be looking at some of those today. All right? We're good so far? We're good, right? All right. So let's look at this neurodiversity paradigm. And as I said, neurodiversity really has to do with the biological reality that human brains are naturally diverse. Every one of us on this platform, even though we're born equal, we have different experiences. We're born to different families. We have different values. We have different culture. So it's the biological reality that human brains are naturally diverse. So no child comes into your classroom who thinks exactly the same as everybody else. And so the shift And this is why I love neurodiversity. I've been in special ed now for over 20 years, and I'm literally seeing the shift now. We are moving away from fixing defects towards building the environment. I was sharing with an early childhood group the other day that we keep on talking about this thing called readiness, and the child is ready for primary school and so on. And I was saying to her, we need to shift that thinking that readiness is inside of this child. Readiness really is external. Do we have do we have schools that are ready for children? Do we have homes that are ready? And so on. So the shift really is moving away from fixing.
It's just our experiences.
Yes. So we're moving away from fixing a child who has ADHD and fixing a child who has a learning disability and so on. More towards building a supportive environment to accommodate that child to be the best he or she can be. So that's where the shift is now in this new paradigm. And so the goal is to find a room where variations in learning style are not only expected, but it's normalized. So your approach to teaching is to naturally think that everybody in my class will learn differently. They will respond to the learning experience differently. They'll come from different pathways. They will come with different perspectives, especially those who are in the high school setting. And if you shift the focus that way, and all of us know that change and stuff, it's very painful. Sometimes it's hard to shift from the things that we know and we learned to unlearn them and to look at things with different lens. So the goal of this presentation is to help us with that shift and create a room where variations in learning styles are not only expected, but normalized. I want you to just look at the picture on the right. You see that little naughty chair, that empty chair? Look behind it. See all the psychedelic lights and so on? That's what happened in some children's brains. And we're going to look at kids with ADHD, for instance, and because they're the ones really who spend a lot of time in the naughty chair. And so we're going to be shifting focus to look. And if you look in the picture clearly, you'll see the regular classroom with the chairs and stuff in the corner on the left there, and that child who's in the naughty chair, whose brain is just wired up so differently. All right? So, the naughty label versus the neurological reality. And I must admit, colleagues, that when I first started out in teaching, there were some students who I really thought were just rude and just out of order. And you wish there are days when they don't come to school and you think it's the best class that you have because they're not there, troublemakers and so on. And as you grow into the profession and you get to understand children and how they learn and so on, it changes your perspective. And so let's look at this shift, the neurological reality. So it looks like the behavior refusing to look at the teacher. In reality, it could be auditory processing focus. You do have children who have issues with auditory processing. And so you insisting that this child look at you, and the child is really confused because there's so many things happening around him, so many stimuli and so on. He's really trying to focus, but the classroom is noisy. He probably keeps saying to the students, shut up now. Shut up, the man, I don't want to hear this, that type of stuff. You also have children who, when Miss is speaking, remember that story that we did a while ago? What he's processing is pure gibberish. He hears well, he doesn't have a hearing impairment or anything, but what the brain is processing is just sheer gibberish. And Miss thinks that he is not paying attention. He's probably being rude and so on. Look at the other one, blatant blurting out. Some children have not mastered, even adults too, guys, have not mastered what we call self-regulation. And in particular, children with ADHD, they have problem with impulse control. Even, and to be honest, some people who don't have ADHD have that too. And so because the brain and that part of the brain that controls impulse control, that part of the brain is not functioning very well. And so he will blurt out anything. If we have Jamaicans on the platform, they know what SYM means. And so they will blurt it out in class. They don't care if Mrs. standing right there. They don't care if their teachers are around. They will say what they want to say. Poor impulse control. And as I said, we do have adults like that too. That's self-regulated. So that part of the brain, I remember part of it, remember we spoke about the environment. Sometimes the environment nurtures that as well. So next time when a child blurts out and says inappropriate things and stuff, just pause. Just pause. Rocking or tapping, sensory regulation. You do have children, especially those with autism, when they become overload, sensory overload. There is a particular behavior that they exhibit called stimming. And those of you who are in special ed on the platform, you'll be familiar with it. So sometimes you'll see them rocking, you'll see the hand flapping. They'll put their hands over their ears and rock and so on. Sensory overload. And sensory overload can be anything. It can be the lighting in the room. It can be the talking. It can be you're teaching for a little bit too long and they're getting tired. That is how they communicate that they're overloaded. So when you see the rocking and the tapping, human beings, remember some of them can't speak, they're nonverbal, and so you have to watch the body and the behavior to pause again to realize that. And it happens to babies too. Those of us who are mothers, on the platform, when the babies get overwhelmed and overstimulated, they will cry and probably cry unbearably. And after a while, you get to understand their behaviors, that you'll know if they just want a cuddle or they just want to be left alone for a little bit. Same principle. So the naughty label, we're moving away from that. So looking at the reality and trying to understand what exactly is causing the behavior. I'd want to pause. Is there anybody who wants to ask a question at this point before we move on? Good. I should also let you know the part about refusing to look at the teacher. Boys, and I've raised boys all my life as a parent. I have 3 of them. I've taught at a boys' school for a few years, and I know for sure that boys do not like direct eye contact with you. You rarely get that. And you as a teacher said, boy, look at me. Boy, look at me when I'm talking to you. He literally shuts you out. So that's what you have to think about when you see certain kinds of behaviors. So let's look at some of those neurodiverse students who you have in your classroom. And I want to start.
Dr. Jane, somebody has their hand up.
Someone has a hand up.
Jean,
I have a question.
Yes, Jeanette.
So I have noticed this behavior in classes, especially
Let me go back to the slide. Yeah.
The overstimulation one, right? Sensory overload.
Mm-hmm.
What do I do though? Would I see
you notice the stimming?
Yes, sometimes you see the tapping, the rocking.
Right.
Do I stop the lesson?
There's a part in the presentation we're gonna.
Okay, no problem.
When we look at some instructions, right?
Okay.
All right. So there are some features of ADHD. And we're just going to go through some of them. Attention deregulation. Remember we spoke about some people can't self-regulate. And it's not just behavior, it can also be neurological. So that part of the brain, again, that deals with focus, that deals with attention and so on, that part of the brain is not wired. Or wired differently, I should say. And so they have difficulty filtering out background noises or distractions. And you can pick up these children in your classroom. And any little thing that they hear, they're off. Anything. And that's why I tell teachers, try not to put students with ADHD near a window, because anything that they see a boy walking, they're off. They're off the task. And so it's difficult for them to filter out distractions. Another thing too is they have a thing called time blindness. They struggle with tasks that are time bound. One, they can't really estimate how long a task would take. And so when I was in a special ed classroom, we had to end up using like timers and so on. And even if we don't have timers, and I still do it, unfortunately, when I'm teaching my adult students, I'll tell them 5 minutes to go, 2 more minutes, that kind of thing, because part of being of having ADHD is that they don't, so sometimes in 2 minutes they're done, or when everybody else is finished, they're still working. They have both ends of them. So they struggle. And so that is why you find people with ADHD are always late. They always come to the party late. Always go to work late. Very disorganized. They also have issues with working memory. And so if the instruction requires multi-step, after step 2, they're lost. Say you're teaching long division, and you know long division has multiple steps. It takes them a longer time to learn it than another student who does not have these issues. And we're going to be talking about, again, how you can deal with some of these issues that you see. So if you look at the image I have on the right, think of it as an iceberg. So you have hyperactivity at the top, and there's a part of your brain. If you guys in Jamaica, we call it where you have your mole, that frontal part, that forehead, go right back to your mole. That's where you have the seat of executive functioning. That's where all the thinking and all the organization and planning and stuff, that's where it takes place. That's where working memory relies. And so if you think of it, look at the executive functioning submerge. You're seeing it? All of it is submerged. Impulse control. And all of this has to do with the brain and how the brain is wired. Good? So think of the executive functioning. That is the CPU of your brain. That's where everything happens. That's where everything happens in terms of thinking and memory and task initiation, planning, organizing. That's where that happens. And that part of the brain, for many people who have ADHD, even adults, in the workplace, and you call them disorganized and all them clumsy, and them the decks look chaka. And sorry, I know we have people all over the place, but as Jamaicans, those are some of the terms that we use when you're not organized. If you check some of these persons, they may have undiagnosed ADHD. And over the years, and as they, if it's undiagnosed, as they grow older, even though they learn to compensate for it, it still shows up in aspects of their work and their daily life. All right. Autism, sensory overload and structure. Again, it has to autism. It all stems from the brain again, and there are some features of autism. And again, I hope you're seeing the relationship when we're talking about sensory overload now. There's a thing with autism that we call sensory filtering. And these children, hypersensitive to a lot of things. Light, sound. So things that we would find mundane and ordinary and normal in terms of maybe a sound, for them, they're super, super sensitive to it. The lighting in your classroom, the color of the wall in your classroom, clothing, certain texture. You may notice, I don't know if you guys notice that they don't put tags in clothes in your clothes anymore, especially in shirts. So like your t-shirts and so on, you see the stamp on it. It came out of advocacy for children with autism. So like their boxers and their t-shirts and so on, you'll not see tags in them. If you see it, it's rare. So a lot of brands have moved away from tagging to just stamping the label in the clothing, because these children super sensitive, super. Anybody can think of any other sensory filtering that children with autism? Some of you have them in your classroom. Anything else? It could be a smell. How something smells, a scent. You have some children with autism, when you give them crayons, they have to smell it before. Any other areas? Are you seeing anybody writing? Noel? Any other areas that they're hypersensitive to?
Yeah, I'm checking to see if they have anything here.
Because,
Food texture.
because some persons may
Some of them, if you have the class, you have, like say you have a chart in the class and you pull it down, then they will come and put it up back, like something like that too.
we're getting
Yes.
there. We're getting to that one.
I have a few.
Yeah, go ahead. Some hypersensitive.
Food textures, sound of vehicles
Yes.
passing, personal space, food touching.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have those four.
Good.
Mhm.
There's also, I don't know how many of you watch Big Bang Theory. Sheldon is the poster child for autism. You see all of this with him. He doesn't understand sarcasm. They take everything literally. So if you say, for instance, boy, it's raining cats and dogs outside, they're actually looking for cats and dogs outside. So when you're around children with autism, we have to be careful. We don't. I spoke to a parent a few years ago telling her, no, you can't tell a child, say, you're going to kill him if him trouble the figurine. He will take it literally thinking that you're really going to kill him. So you have to be careful how you address children with autism. So things like sarcasm and idioms that we take for granted can cause a lot of confusion for them. You also need to recognize that almost 95% of children with autism has a thing called echolalia. And so they repeat things that you say. And so they may not understand things like pronouns. And so you have to be careful how you phrase what you are saying. So, because they will take it literally. Good, so literal language is a key feature of autism. Routine reliance. Miss just mentioned something about the chart. they are obsessed sometimes with certain things. And because of that, if the routine is changed or the object that they're attached to is removed, it causes great anxiety. So if you're going to be changing something, even if you're going to paint the wall in your classroom in a different color, you have to prepare them for it. And that's why we have schedules. Sometimes for those students who can't speak, we have visual schedules for them so they can see what's coming up next. But if you break their flow, high anxiety will set in and they become overloaded, start screaming, start fighting you, and so on. So structure, structure, structure. I also think, and this is just my theory, human beings naturally love structure, and we get structure through routines and patterns. I think just for survival, the autistic brain has to survive on structure. That's what keeps them sane. And so if that structure is interfered with, problems for them. Problems for them. And I think, and I said it's my own theory of working with them and interacting with them, it's part of their survival mechanism. And so you'll find them playing with the same toy all the time. They will line up the shoes and the blocks the same way every day. They will want to look at a particular chart you have in the class in that very same space because come tomorrow, it must be there. If you move it, worries. Another behavioral characteristic with children with autism is that emotional side of the brain. So again, most of us here, we're good with looking at people and smiling and hi and so on. Children with autism don't understand that. And so most of them avoid eye contact. It makes them very vulnerable. So they don't look at you. They don't do what we call spontaneous play. So you'll never see them come and say to a child, hey, can I play with you? Can I play with your blocks? No. They will do what they call parallel play. So even though children are playing and so on, they're doing their own thing. If a child starts crying and so on, you're not going to find that autistic child going to say, oh, I'm so sorry. What happened to you? And some people may see them as cold, rude, and so on. I know for some parents, especially mothers, it's difficult because during the breastfeeding process, this child doesn't look in your eyes and bond with you. And for some mothers, that's really, really hard. The child doesn't smile, the child doesn't show any feelings, show any emotions, and so on. And again, as I said, you have to do visual communication and stuff with them for them to understand what these things are. But these are just some key features of how this type of neurodiversity operates. Those are some of the key features. So sensory filtering, literal language, routine reliance. So if you're going to be changing their routine or their structure, you'll have to walk them through the process. So Jordan, today we're going to be doing so and so and so. After that, then we're going to do so and so and so and so on. And you have to do it in that same format that you told them, because if you don't, then you throw them off. And it, again, their way of responding to it is probably, you may see it as being rude and violent and this child kicking me and so on. That's how the body responds to it. That's the behavior because of the anxiety. Just and think of it of young children. When kids are young and them have high anxiety, they will kick and they will scream, throw things around and so on. It happens, right? So that's one of them. Let's look at learning disability.
There's a hand, Dr. Chin.
Yes, go ahead, please. Go ahead, I'm listening. They need to probably unmute.
Yeah, Cassandra.
Go ahead, Cassandra. Is she hearing us? Cassandra?
Or we're not hearing her. Maybe we could carry on and she could write it in the chat.
Yeah, yeah. Anyone else has a question before we move on?
Gayleen.
Okay, so let's move now to another category of neurodiversity, and this is learning disabilities. Actually, this category carries the largest number of individuals with neurodiversity. These are extremely bright people, very, very bright, but of course, how their brain processes information and how it's wired up, it's a little bit different. So it's impairment in one or more of the psychological processes, the brain processes that has to do with perceiving, thinking, remembering, learning information. So you'll find issues with language processing, phonological processing. So it's hard for them to learn like the alphabet and the phonics and so on. Visual spatial processing, perceptual motor integration. They used to call it the clumsy child syndrome. These children will just be walking and trip over themselves. They come into the classroom and they trip over the chair or they trip over the desk, that kind of thing. So they have perceptual motor integration, depth perception type of thing. So think of a baby, and the baby is on the bed, and the baby doesn't know the distance from the surface of the bed to the ground. And so they must come off unless we are watching them and they'll fall and they'll cry and so on. These children, it's a similar thing. They don't understand in terms of gates. So these people, oh my goodness. I know an adult like that who still can't park a car in the slot, that in the parking slot that is there. It's either over the line or sideways and so on. So perceptual motor integration, have problems tying their shoelace, buttoning up their shirts, that kind of thing. Processing speed. And I'm going to ask my Jamaican people, who was the first Prime Minister of Jamaica? Quick. Now look and tell me who was the answer.
Bustamante.
Very good. Sir Alexander Bustamante was the first Prime Minister of Jamaica. Now, here what happens to a student who has LD. He will have to process who to know that it's talking about a person. He has to process was to know that you're speaking in the past. He has to process first to know you're talking about one. He has to process Prime Minister, and then he has to process Jamaica. By the time he processed all of that, like how Sir blurted out a while ago, the kids blurt it out. And sometimes you're moving and you're doing a lesson, and the child suddenly blurts out. Sir Alexander Bustamante, processing speed. And that is why you may notice when children are doing external exams, they're given additional time. We usually give them, rule of thumb is 15 minutes for every hour. It's really because of this processing speed issue that they have. So they take a longer time. You might be here sharing a joke and you're laughing and everything. Me and Noah laughing and having a grand time.
Say that again.
You and I are laughing and having a great time, right?
Yes.
And we laugh when we're moving along, and then Peter bursts out laughing. And you're wondering, huh? him just getting the joke. And so people call them slow. Sometimes if my table said, me not tell Peter about like Peter never get the joke. He'll get it now. He'll get it eventually, but it will take him a little bit longer to get it. The processing speed. And you can imagine for activities that are time sensitive, like exams, it brings on a lot of stress for them because they're thinking, oh my God, how much time I have left, sir? That kind of thing. So the anxiety will be there. Executive functioning, and we spoke about that earlier, that part of your brain that deals with organization and planning and memory and so on. And so if you look on the right side of the umbrella, it interferes with more than one of the following. Oral language. So things like listening. So you'll hear them all the time saying, let me say again. Sorry, can you say this again? They don't have a hearing problem. It's how their brain is processing. Speaking, understanding, reading, written language. They can't spell to save their life. Mathematics, organization, social skills. So it interferes not only with their academics, but it also interferes with their social life. Right? So I have a friend who he has a learning disability, and up to this very day, he can't say stipend. He said stipend. So I've gotten used to it. So we cut him some slack, eh? So the DIS profile, and this is Latin and it means not able to. So you have dyslexia. So dyslexia is the language processing difference. And so it will show up with reading fluency. A while ago, we showed you that first slide where the dyslexic brain, that's what they see. And so they have a difficulty understanding sounds because remember, language is sound-based. So, and there are some sounds that it's difficult for them to pick up. So if you say, for instance, Noel, is there a difference between pin and pen? He's going to tell you no, because he's hearing the P at the beginning and the N at the end. And so it will take a longer time for them to learn phonics. When they read, sometimes you will, it sounds very choppy because they're trying to say the words, sound out the words. They also have problems with spelling. They have problems because, and you'll find them spelling phonetically. I remember having a student in my class and we were doing some spelling words. And he wrote B-A-Y-B-E, baby. He's literally saying the word and writing it exactly how him say it. Baby, B-A-Y-B-E. So you'll find that too. Dysgraphia. And this one now has to do with really putting their thoughts on paper and also with writing, physical writing. So these children, if they could talk it out and tell you everything, perfect. But they have a difficulty organizing. Remember executive functioning again? They have a difficulty organizing their thoughts and putting it down on paper. So when you're reading their script, the story starts and then it sounds like it's going into the end and then go back into the middle and very disorganized. And so it's really a physical bottleneck for moving the thoughts from the brain and putting that thought on paper. And so if they were to talk it out and tell you the story and give you the answers, beautiful. Remember, I told you that these kids are very, very bright, you know. But once you ask them to write, that's where the challenge is. They have a block. Dyscalculia. Now, this is the math one. So these children have difficulty learning mathematics. It may not be that difficult early on in like kindergarten, preschool, but as they get older, you're going to see the difficulty. So they may reverse multiplication and call it addition and vice versa. They have problems with the number line. They have problems doing things like 100 tens and ones. Very, very difficult for them. Some of us on the platform here probably still having problems with mathematics, right, Noel? Some people right on this platform still struggle with mathematics. It's a genuine processing problem. So don't feel any way, right? Children who are dyslexic too do reversals. So if you have letters like B and D, they'll reverse that, probably even P. There's some letters of the alphabet, whether it is uppercase or lowercase, it looks the same way. So like, for instance, the letter C, the letter O. So whether it is in uppercase or lowercase, it looks the same. So when they write, you might see in the middle of a word, uppercase O or uppercase C, and they turn it around the other way and so on. It's how the brain is processing information for them. Let's look at some environmental accommodations. As we said, and visual timelines, even though it's important for students who may have autism, it really applies to all children. Visual timeline eliminates unexpected transition anxiety. You don't want the children in your classroom to be constantly anxious and want to know what's coming next. So like in early childhood, we ask them to have visual displays of schedule so the children know exactly what is going to come next. A visual schedule of or of how to use the wash their hands, stuff like that. So have visual timelines for children. You can do countdowns too. You can use the stoplight. So you go and then so on and so when you hold up the red, they know that time is up. Good, it reduces the anxiety. So you time them down. 1 minute to go, guys. Okay, you should be doing so and so and so by now, that kind of thing. Sensory depressurization zones. I know in some Jamaican classrooms it can be a bit crowded, but you don't have to have this in your classroom. Just have a space where the child can decompress, depressurize, calm down. So you have a calm zone in your classroom or very near to your classroom. Please don't usher them out of the classroom. Get out of my class, boy. Recognize that this child needs to depressure, de-escalate, go back to being self-regulate. The worst thing you can do to a child is when they're angry, upset, anxious, to be shouting at them too. You need to be calm to help the child to be calm. I know you're angry right now. I know what you're feeling, but you need to get yourself calm, and here's how we are going to do it. Let's take some deep breath, and you want to step outside for a minute or walk up, that kind of thing. So have a sensory depression, and the same thing happens for children with autism. Children with LD, calm them down. ADHD. Movement friendly seating. I'm sure maybe for some of you this might be new. You have tennis balls, you can cut them in half and you can put them on the chair, the legs of the chair. Standing desks, Noel can tell you about those. We don't really have those much in Jamaica, but you have standing desks for some children. And by the way, some of you may notice that some children, for some reason, like to go in front of the board and stand and write. Perfect candidate for standing desks. Some children, they function better standing. Funny enough, some children, as they come, they take off the shoes and they're in their socks alone. Colleagues, leave them alone. Don't tell them.
That's so true. That's so true.
Leave them alone. Leave them. When I come home, the first thing I do is kick off my shoes. So some children are more comfortable in their socks. Some children don't want to sit on the bench, they want to sit on the floor. Have that kind of arrangement in a classroom that give children that latitude for their brain to breathe. Because that's how they learn. They learn better with standing. They learn better with the chairs. They don't have to hear the sound of the chairs moving, that kind of thing. Or you have resistant bands, especially those children who have the ADHD and stuff. They have special pencils for them too, special pens. If you look in my handbag, I always have these little wobbly things that they play, that I cannot give it to a child to play with, to keep them. Some children, and you may notice that sometimes when because children with ADHD, some part of the body must be moving. So you'll see them and one of the legs just shaking. Leave them alone. Leave them alone. Let them shake. What I used to do again when I was in the classroom, I used to glue Velcro under the desk. So when the hand get antsy and they can use the Velcro for that sensory stimulation. So they can rub their hands on the Velcro while they're doing the work and so on. So you have that as well. Some pens have the little grit thing in the middle, the gripping part, where it has a little grit, where they can use when they're grasping the pen and so on, or the pencil. You can get some of that as well for
The
them.
fidget, can use the fidget.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah.
So you notice we're moving away from the whole traditional, so just thinking outside the box now. How do I accommodate this ADHD child in my classroom? Good. So I have movement-friendly seating arrangement and have little things that they can do. For your sensory depressurization zones too, you can do low-cost things in your classroom. For instance, many of you probably would have file jackets. You know those file folders? Put two of them together and make it like a little barrier on the desk. So you have it ready-made, and so you can put it on the desk when the child, or you can put them in a corner and have it there and then just sit down there. Nobody has to see them. If they want to cry and stuff, they can do them crying and thing, and they're in the little corner. When you think they have settled, you can let them go back and join the other students. Because you also want to humanize the experience for them as well, for them not to feel that they're different from everybody else. And by the way, they know that they're different from everybody else, right? So we don't need to reinforce it in the classroom. Instructional accommodations, task chunking. I like project-based learning. I like putting things in project format. I even do it with my adult students. And they do small steps that lead up to their final grades. So you can do things in chunk. You can even chunk your assignments. So one group can do this part of the assignment, another group can do that part, and then you put all the pieces together and everybody shares the final piece when it's done. So break small, big projects into small, and then you have your rubrics and so on. So it becomes more meaningful. So every little chunk that they do, they get graded for it and they're rewarded. Also provide multimodal communication. You can provide the instructions verbally, visually, and also in writing. So don't just tell them. You can also put it down on paper. You can give them a picture of it or whatever the instruction is. Right? Alternative expressions. We're in the age of technology. Let the kids do a podcast. Let the kids put on a webinar as part of their project. And even though everybody is in the classroom, just create a Zoom link. And Noel is going to make his presentation today via Zoom. And you make them adhere to all the Zoom protocols and so on. We're in the age of technology, we can use it. Reports, they can go interview people and bring back the information to class. Or you can have type text. But of course, the third one, type text, yes, but let's use up the technology that we have at our disposal to help our students. All right, so let's now get into some behavioral support that we can use with our students. First thing first, you have to be calm. Noel rub you the wrong way and you say, if that boy ever say anything to me right now, trust me. So you have to make sure that you de-escalate. So in your own little head, I'm going to be calm. I'm going to be calm. So calm your own voice, speak quietly to the child, and also regulate your posture. This helps to regulate the children's nervous system. You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. And I'm telling you, learning all of these colleagues, I wish I knew this when I was a young teacher. Because I tell you, I used to fly off the handle sometimes with the students. But you learn that you're going to be calm, use your calm voice, check your posture to make sure you're not coming across as aggressive. Because sometimes the children, your behavior becomes predictable after a while. I learned that as a teacher, that the children know your pressure points and they know how to use it. And so if your behavior becomes predictable, they know exactly what to say to get you off. So just respond calmly. And if it's something you can't, just tell them, I'm not ready to talk to you about this right now. I'm going to finish my class and then we're going to deal with this, and make sure you follow through. So co-regulation, you make sure that you regulate your feelings, your emotions, to help them to regulate theirs. So you have to model it for them. Proactive breaks. Colleagues, sometimes as adults, we get into this thing too, and we just have to take a break. You know what? Again, take a break. So either again walk outside or something. The same thing happens in your classroom. So when you pick up that the students are getting antsy and stuff, do some sensory movement. Get up and do a little dance or sing a song. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. Roly-poly, fast, that kind of thing. So do movement stuff with the children. If you realize that things are going to, escalate and get a little heated, snap it right there. And get them into the groove and you just go back to your lesson. So proactive breaks, but again, you have to have a pulse on your students. Read the room, know when things are, and then you do your thing. Positive scripting. I had a challenge with my son's form teacher years ago when he was attending high school. And apparently something happened in the class and the entire class got detention. And he came on there and he told me, now I have a problem with other children suffering because a few children in the class misbehave. When I went to him and I asked him, tell me exactly what is really happening, he told me that the boys always throwing stuff in the class. When I'm eating, them throw stuff in the classroom and they mess up the place and them don't eat in the canteen and so on. And I asked him, so tell me, you tell the students what they're not to do. Have you told them what they are to do? And he paused and he thought, because I said to him, think about it. If we don't tell the kids what is the behavior that you're looking for, they don't know. They don't know. So you have a sign that says, do not walk on the grass. Yet, the corridors are sometimes not the best place for the children to walk. So we have to look around and ask ourselves, what are the specific behaviors I want the children to display? And that is what we focus on. So for instance, I'm taking out my granddaughter. And I have a discussion with her, and I said to her, Reese, we're going to go to the mall. And I don't say to her, you're going to behave yourself, because she doesn't know what behave yourself looks like. So you're going to go to the mall, and you're not going to let my hand go. You must always hold my hand. Always hold my hand. You're not going to scream for anything. When we go in the supermarket, you're going to ask me for something. You're not going to go on the shelf and take up anything without asking me first. You talk them through. You talk them through. And so if she does do something that I did not tell her to do, then I have all right to punish her, not true, because I told her what is expected of her. So she goes into the experience knowing exactly what it is that I want from her. As children, of course, they will grow off the train, eh? And that's when you and bring them back. But I walk her through exactly what I want to see when we go out to the mall. And I tell her exactly what we're going to do. We're going to go to the supermarket, and then we're going to go to the so-and-so, and then we're going to stop and have some ice cream and go back home. And she's good with that. I asked her, you good with that? You good? And she says, yes, Grandma, we're fine. We're good to go. That's what we're talking, the positive scripting. And then you reward them when you see the behavior happening. There you go. Noel has his books out. Great job. He has all of his tools ready. I see his pens. I see his markers. Excellent. Oh, great. Nice, Trishana. I see Trishana has everything ready. And tell them exactly the behavior that you're looking for and reward it. What I've learned raising my boys is that boys naturally love attention, but sometimes they don't know how. I can share a story. When I was younger, much younger, I wasn't married. I don't even remember I was married then. And I was walking downtown, and this young man was, psst, psst, and I'm ignoring. So he comes up to me and says, nice girl, you know, see me, I try call to you. I said, I am not familiar with, psst. I'm familiar with nice girl. I'm trying to, and he smiled because he kind of understood that doing the will not get attention. So you have to tell people exactly the behavior that you want, right? So tell the children exactly what you want them to do and not what you want to stop. I want you to stop making noise. Okay. What does that mean?
Dr. Chin, just very quickly, we want you to wind down in about 5 minutes and allow some of the questions. I have a few responses in here. So if you could just close down a little bit, work towards not closing, but coming to an end of this section.
Yeah, so we're getting there. Oh, for this one, so instead of saying stop running, say walk safely in the hallway. Neurodivergent brains struggle to process negative commands. Can you imagine? Struggle to process negative commands, right? And so we have to reframe. So these are some other strategies you can use for children who have LD. This works very well. Graphic organizers. So visual display of the information. It helps the brain to focus some more. It helps the brain, that executive functioning part of the brain, to organize the information for them. So use it. Concept maps, especially if you have a large chunk of information coming from that particular concept, have it done in a concept. And this works very well for students with learning disabilities. Their learning environment, the way the classroom works and feels, the way the classroom creates a sense of community. Make sure there are places in the room to work quietly without distraction, as well as places that students collaborate. Providing materials that reflect a variety of culture and home settings, very important. Setting clear guidelines for independent work that matches it. You may have some students in your classroom who don't want to work in a group, or you may have students who are gifted and you want to give them some independent work to challenge them. Developing routines that allow students to get help when you're busy. with other students and you can't help them immediately. So again, you're going to have your visual chart with the routine to show them when I'm working with this set of students, what you should do. Help students understand that some learners need to move around to learn while others do better by sitting quietly. Help the children to understand neurodiversity and that everybody in the class learn differently. Some may need to move around quietly while some of you would want to sit quietly. So educate your students. And I'm going to pause here. Noel, we can take some questions.
Yes, I just want to say that this is so relevant, it's amazing, amazing, amazing. If you have any questions, we'd like for you to write them in the chat or raise your hand. Want to just read something here. We probably have to do a diagnosis. LOL. This person asks, is autism or dyslexia genetic? Here's why I'm asking. I identify with almost all of those things that you have described so far. I lose it when things are not done in the expected order. I cannot hang out clothes without order in the pin. Organize the clothes by color. If I remember my bed wasn't made, I will literally go back to the house, etc. And then she said, I have 2 children and they're basically operating in the same manner.
Oh, wow. Well, to be honest with you, a lot of research that shows direct relationship, especially LD with genetics. So they did a lot of studies and found, and by the way, boys have it more than girls. The occurrence of LD happens more in boys than in girls. And again, it has to do with the processing of the brain. And autism, lots of research is also pointing to hereditary factors and in terms of how the brain operates. But the person who wrote about the clothespins and stuff, there is a thing called obsessive compulsive disorder, where and people with autism tend to have that part too. But OCD can operate on its own. It comes out of anxiety. That's where it really resides, OCD. And I think it's more linked to that because you mentioned that you go home thinking that the iron is probably still plugged in and so on. And so that is, it comes out of what we call anxiety disorders, OCD. So that sounds a little bit more. So you may probably have to check the environment. People with OCD tend to be what we call perfectionists. So is it that maybe you were raised to believe that everything must be perfect? And in your child rearing, you probably, maybe unconsciously too, bring that across that everything has to be perfect. And so it brings on the anxiety and you become obsessed with things that things must be in order and things must always be perfect, right? So something to think about. But LD definitely has genetic links. Any other question?
While you're waiting, one person comment here that I realize it when I allow them to move around in class, that's when they participate in the lesson more.
And as I said, it's a learning profile. Some children are very tactile kinesthetic, and so you have to give them that room because that's how they process information. That's how they process. I heard an interview once with Usain Bolt, and they were talking to him about his running and so on. And he said over the years, he listened to his body and he developed a rhythm. And when his body is out of rhythm, he knows. It's the same thing with children who are kinesthetic learners. Wow. Their mind works with a rhythm. They and you can see, for instance, they're learning their multiplication tables, and you see them rocking 2 1s, 2 2s, and so on. Highly kinesthetic. Some people have to touch and so on. So yeah, walking around works for some children. Anything else you see, Noel?
Yes.
Hi, good night.
Go ahead.
So I have a class of about 24 children. Some are diagnosed ADHD, dyslexia. Most of them are undiagnosed. Classroom is any advice to deal with that? Because I'm not a special ed teacher. So it's a real challenge.
Okay. So you say you have students diagnosed with LD and ADHD?
Yes, and dyslexia. Well, my daughter is diagnosed with autism, so I have some knowledge of that, and I could see, little aspects of it. But a lot of these students are undiagnosed, but I know there are challenges with them.
Okay, so the first thing you have to look at is your classroom arrangement, because your classroom arrangement can make the situation worse. Remember, I said earlier in my presentation that, for instance, students with ADHD must never, ever, ever sit near a window, never, ever, ever sit near a door. So you have to look back at your seating arrangement where you place your students, and I recommend that you don't keep them in the same groups and stuff all the time. Have flexible grouping in your classroom. Remember, I spoke to you earlier in the presentation, and I've sent it to Dr. Dice so you all can benefit from it. Have some safe zones in your classroom. Have some times when they decompress. They're just calm. So you'll have to teach them. For instance, the other day I went to a class, and it's similar to what you're talking about. And I started telling them that, listen, there are some things, when I'm reading, this is what you're going to do. So if you're not sure of something, you're going to put your finger on your chin and you're going to think of, let me hear everybody say, So when I ask you a question, finger on your chin, and I'm going to give you 5 seconds to think about it before you respond. So you have to teach them the behaviors. So as a class, this is what we're going to do. For those who have the autism, have your visual cues. For those with your ADHD, have your visual cues. Remember, I spoke to you also about the time.
Yes.
So you count them down, but the main thing you have to do is to tell them of your expectations. Tell them the behaviors that you want to see. Make sure you have your rewards. That's when you see the behaviors, you're rewarding those persons. Be mindful too. ADHD, remember we spoke about the time restriction thing for them. So try not to give them any tasks that require a whole lot of focus for like 15, 20 minutes.
Okay.
A child with ADHD, you're not going to get, if you get 10 minutes, you're a great teacher.
All right. And I do have students who go under the desk, who stand, and I leave them.
Yeah, leave them.
Yeah, I just leave them because they go under the desk if they have something to do, if they have work in their workbooks, or they may stand. I have students who constantly stand, or they might just walk around randomly, and I just leave them, give them a break.
And at the end of the day with your class, always celebrate too.
I myself need to decompress at times.
Yes. So celebrate them. Noel, I liked how you were focused today. That's really, really good. I'm so proud of you. Oh, Marsha, so at the end of the school day before they go home, have that with them every day. Okay. Those positive affirmations. And trust me, next morning when they come, they want to do the same because they want to be affirmed every day. So do that with them.
And as you said, they already know that they are different. So
they already know.
Yeah. So when you capitalize and dwell on that, you know that they feel, they already know that they are different from everyone else.
Exactly.
So, they need the motivation.
Yeah. So end your class and that goes for everybody on this platform. End your class every day with affirmations. Even though I teach adult learners, I tell them, I am so appreciative of you coming to class today. I know it's difficult working and studying in the evening, but I really appreciate it. I thank you for staying focused and so on. And they really feel motivated.
Yeah, so I have a few more.
Ahead.
Thank you so much. I have a few more. I'm going to merge these two comments, and then I have maybe one or two more. I modeled the expected behavior for them. That's what the first person says. Second person says, also allowing them to do role play that works for me, and also using songs.
Yes. And so it's important to tap into their strengths. That's why I love this whole thing in neurodiversity, because it's really about strength-based teaching. Tapping into the children's strength. We're not worrying about disability and stuff. Tap into their strength and affirming them. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. What do you do when a child uses the diagnosis as an excuse not to behave himself and tell you, Miss, I have ADHD.
Tell him that doesn't work in your class. Say, hey, you know I have ADHD too? So we're going to ADHD together. Okay. But I want my work.
I love that response. Okay. This person was made, we'll just say this one, then I have a couple of things I want to say at the end. If there are no more questions. This person says, I think safe zone in the classroom is difficult if, as a teacher, you move from class to class.
And I guess she's speaking in terms of secondary education?
Apparently.
Okay. The beauty with that too, Noel, is that every time I go into a class, it's my class. Even though I'm not the homeroom teacher there, it's my class. So after Noel has taught, and I'm the next one who's coming in, I have my safe zone in my classroom. For that 45 minutes, hour, whatever time, this is my class. And this area is the area where we have the cooling off. I don't know if Noel uses that in his class, I'm not sure. But in my class, we have a cooling off area where the children or whoever it is has a chance to depressurize. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying, Noel. It can also be a collaborative thing with the school, where there's a zone in the school or zone that all the teachers agree that that is a cooling off area. You follow where I'm going, Noel?
Yeah.
So if 5 teachers enter that classroom every day, the faculty knows that that particular area, that particular zone is the cool off zone.
Okay, awesome. We're getting ready to close out soon, but let me just summarize this comment. This person says, one class, you have to allow the students to move around. Another class, you have to allow them to be more restricted. And students feel that you're treating the ones who move around as favorites.
Come again, one class?
One class, you know, you don't need to accommodate them by allowing them to move around. They can sit. But the other class, you have to allow the students to move around and even make a little noise. So the students who have to sit and remain composed are saying, hey, you're treating them differently from us. We are not your favorite.
Oh, yeah, that can happen too. But as I said in the slide, it requires helping students to understand that some learners need to move around to learn while others do better sitting quietly. You have to have that conversation with your students.
Yeah. Okay. Before we end, I have a surprise for you, Dr. Chin. I have someone online here who was your former student. You taught this person human exceptionalities at Michael, and this person also taught one of your sons. So I'm going to ask this person to come on and just say something, give a little affirmation. Come on, young man. He's no doctor.
Dr. Chin. Dr. Chin is Robinson. I was hoping you'd pick up from the voice.
I'm actually calling you Dr. Robinson.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm glad my camera
this evening, though. Very practical.
Glad my camera is off.
That's all right. We'll catch up off camera.
Thank you so much, Dean.
You have taught me too, Dr. Chen. Yes, in early childhood. Special. Yes. When we talk about the special ed, and you taught us about the cerebral palsy, the droolers and the bangers and all of those persons, you taught me to at the Michael University. I am now in Sabre and I'm doing my master's now.
And you still remember the things I taught you.
Yes, I'm using them in my classroom up until this day, so I can know the students. Yeah, I observe them just as you said, and yes, and when I saw this workshop, I said I need to be here, to get some more insights.
Wow, thank you.
You know how powerful this is? I wanted to do this because as educators, we are unsung heroes and the job is not easy. I remember when I taught, there were days when I get to that school, I said, God, take me through the day because sometimes children are challenged. But what Dr. Chin is experiencing here now, it tells you that there are people whose lives you've impacted. And you are contributing to the perpetuation of society in a very good way. So let this be an object lesson for everyone here, knowing that your work is not in vain.
Wow, I'm blown away.
And I also want to take this moment, Dr. Chen, you're my personal friend, and you've always given exceptional presentation. I remember you were in New York City at Manhattan College, and you spoke about self-evaluation, self-assessment, self-reflection, and that still remains indelible on my mind. We're going to have to bring you in to do that self-assessment presentation at some point in time. But you did an exceptional job. You could take down take on the share now, so at least we can see the folks. You did an exceptional job, and Dean texted me, Dr. Dean Robbins texted me, and he said it's so relevant. The things that you said, in essence, he said it's such a relevant presentation, and that's why I decided to bring him on. Thank you so very much. Just know that it is our desire, our intention to really provide professional development across the Caribbean and across the world. Things that are relevant to help one another. We are closing out, but we're just going to give Miriam Edwards. We give you because time is of the essence, and we have some housekeeping to do. Vivian, could you say what you have to say, and then we're going to be closing out.
And please remember to give them the PowerPoint.
Yes, we talk about that. Yeah, Vivian.
So okay, thanks. Good evening, everyone. I'm really enjoying the session. I'm just asking though, what else? Any more suggestions? Because I'm in the secondary setting. I have classes sometimes with over 20 students, boys aged from grade 7 to say third to grade 9. And sometimes it can really be chaotic. When they get up to move around, I normally say, no, I don't want anybody walking in the class because I'm almost certain trouble is going to come up out of it. So I see the suggestions for how you keep them comfortable, etc. But is there anything more for teenagers? Because I think the ones we get, they have difficulty reading, and they have come up through primary school struggling, and they start developing negative coping strategies, and they take this with them into high school. And then you have to be struggling with that while trying to teach.
True.
Any more suggestions in that setting?
And that teenage brain is a difficult one to deal with. And by the time you get them in high school, they would have experienced failure for several years. And so the lower self-esteem, you're going to now have to be dealing with hormones in that mix. And so it requires a lot of conversations, setting expectations. And when we say setting expectations, setting high expectations, they first need to understand that they can learn. And you want them to learn. They have to trust you. And guess what? We don't teach to a teach to a curriculum. So you have to assess them, know their entry points, and start from there. You may have students who still struggling to learn the letters of the alphabet. So you have to know the profile of your students through assessment, have that conversation with them, and help them to understand that you are there to help them learn. Teenagers want someone they can trust. And sometimes we have to put aside the teaching or the content. Not true, no, we have to put aside the content and the curriculum and get to know them. Once we cross that bar, because by this, remember that we're dealing with teenagers with all kinds of hormones. Many of them can't read, and you say, I hope, behavioral issues. But if you can now get their trust, the next step is to help them to see how learning makes them a better person. Why what you're teaching them is so important. Teach them life skills. Why is it important to come to my class early? Why is it important to make sure you have all your tools when you go? It's literally a relationship you're building with them, you know. Literally a relationship. And you start that first thing in September. And once you have earned their trust and they bring you into their space, you're going to see remarkable changes. Remarkable changes. Help
Awesome.
them to see the relationship between learning, what you're teaching them, and how it will benefit their lives. So I hope that can help. As a
Yes, it has.
starting
It has.
point.
Dr. Chin, you have a lot of fans on here, folks telling you that you taught them in all kinds of program. Listen, we're going to have to do a part 2 on this because I see a lot of questions, but we have to be mindful of the time. The fact that, you know, as I've said on this program on so many occasions, that when I was a teacher, my supervisor said to me, you know, the students are learning when they're asking questions. So that is so.
We lost you, Dr. Noel. I wonder if he pressed the wrong. I don't know if he pressed the wrong button, but I'm so happy that I have past students on the platform. And I hope the things I taught you years ago that you still use it. I believe in the power of relationship in teaching. Teaching is a relationship. The students are looking to you to guide them. I know when you're in a high school setting, the whole thing of hormones and stuff started, and boys become especially boys, and they become very defensive and so on. So the trust part is important, but help them to understand that what I'm teaching you will make your life better. So over to you, sir.
All right, thank you so much again. And words cannot adequately express so much. We appreciate what you presented today. It's very effective, very relevant. And we're going to have to request a part 2. So start thinking about your part 2 right now, Dr. Chin. Folks, remember now, if you'd like to get a certificate, you know, the professional development certificates, we know that school districts now want to know that you're involved in professional development. Then you have to complete the end of presentation survey. It is in the chat here. It's also available on the site. You got all that information when you registered. So make sure you have 24 hours to complete the end of presentation survey. And that comes along with the $6. $6 is only to defray the cost for the certificate, the preparation. So we're not charging you for the presentation. So please do that for us. It's in the chat, and yes, you will have access to the PowerPoint also. Thanks, Dr. Chin, for giving it to us, and Dr. Dice will make that available. If you'd like to see the presentation or share it with someone, make sure that you go to the ESI site, and you will be able to access it on YouTube. Now, next week we have another very, very intriguing presentation. Dr. Prayante Ravi, she's a neuropsychologist, doctor of medicine, neuropsychologist, and she's a burnout specialist, and she'll be speaking on symptoms of burnout in educators. You can't afford to miss that one next week, Wednesday, same time, same